A few of you may have seen this picture. Yeah, that's me, singing with the Tabernacle Choir on the 6th of March 2025. It was posted by RFM due to a misunderstanding and was taken down within minutes at the request of myself and Jim Bennett. And that's because you were never meant to know that I'd done this. It was just meant to be an experience for my own enjoyment. I was signed up under my real name, and Jim knew I wasn't there for content purposes. However, all that changed when a member of the choir, we'll call her Karen, upon recognising me, tried to get me kicked out. But how did I get in to sing with them in the first place? Well, sit back and allow me to tell you the tale of how I, an excommunicated apostate, ended up singing with the Tabernacle Choir. Now, just for some context, I've sung choral music throughout my life.
Das Russland, das ich meine, davon Jesaja sang.
So when I started to become friends with Jim Bennett of the Inside Out podcast, we got to talking about our shared love of choral music. Jim sings tenor in the Tabernacle Choir, and he said if I'd like to sing with the choir, he could make that happen. That was in the summer of 2024. Knowing I would be coming to Utah the following year, we arranged for me to participate in a Tabernacle Choir rehearsal on Thursday the 6th of March 2025 as his musical guest. Growing up Mormon, the Tabernacle Choir are in your ears at least twice a year as they perform at General Conference. Beyond that, the music of the Tabernacle Choir was pervasive in my own musical upbringing. And have I had some things to say about Mac Wilberg not stretching the choir with more complex arrangements at conference? Yes, I have. Have I perhaps called them boring? Maybe. But I do come from the English choral tradition where the works of people like Tallis and his complex polyphony are common repertoire. Regardless of that, I was very excited to fulfill a lifelong dream of singing with the Tabernacle Choir, and I was really grateful that I would be able to participate in my church community in such a special way. Then, I was excommunicated from that community for apostasy in September 2024. I was worried about how this would affect my ability to join in, and Jim said it wouldn't be a problem so long as I didn't submit my bio to Mac under the name Nemo the Mormon. If I attended this rehearsal as my normal non-YouTube self under my real name, there wouldn't be an issue. So that's what we did. The evening soon came round, and after dinner with Jim, we headed over to the Tabernacle. And it was spectacular. The photographer took pictures, I met other guests and their families, and I got to sit and listen to some of the warm-up and the devotional beforehand. Then, in a moment I'll never forget, I was led up into the choir stalls, known as the loft, to take my place amongst the choir, and we got straight into it. I had tried to prep, but mostly I was sight reading and listening very closely to my fellow section members. And I was having such a good time and was getting such good feedback from those around me that they asked if I would like to stay until the very end, when guests are normally taken out just after 9 PM to allow the choir to work on some new pieces. Now, just before the other guests left, we were all stood up one at a time as they read out our bios.
He is signed with the Young Voices UK, Warwickshire County Youth Orchestra, Salford University Chamber Choir, and Voices of the Islands. And he has also been involved in entering performances of Lamb of God, Our Story Goes On, Animals Inside, and Anonymous Vespers. And Tabernacle Choir's membership is now officially the largest choir he has ever sung.
And it was at this point I think I started to get recognised. At first it was positive. After the rehearsal ended and as I was making my way down the stairs, a member of the choir came, shook my hand and said, "Cheers Nemo, good to see you." Then, as Jim was showing me more of the tabernacle, the aforementioned Karen approached and said to me, "I recognised you." I tried to play it off by saying, "Shh, don't tell anyone," because I couldn't quite tell if she was seriously upset or not. Her next declarative statement cleared that up for me. "I told Grant. The question on all of your lips is the same as was on mine. Who's Grant?" At this point I had no idea, but I began to get the sinking feeling that this would spell trouble for Jim. Karen's final words as we approached the steps out of the tabernacle were, "I hope you had a nice time." I was doubtful of her sincerity, but I met her with sincerity when I told her, absolutely, I had a wonderful time, thank you very much. As Jim and I stepped out into Temple Square to go to the car, another individual recognised me and was happy to see me, and some other choir members asked where in England I was from. But the experience with Karen lingered in the back of my head, and so I followed up with Jim to find out what had happened with Grant. And here's what I found out. It turns out that when Karen recognised me from over in the women's section of the choir, she rushed out before the end of the rehearsal to go and tell Grant, who I've later learned manages the men's section of the choir. Karen demanded that he remove me from the choir loft immediately. To my surprise, not knowing Grant and knowing how some church leaders may feel about me and my work, he told her no, he wouldn't remove me, and I was welcome to keep singing. Now by this time, Jim had also been asked by the person who escorted me up into the loft whether I was a member of the church. And Jim said, well, he was when we set this up. When Jim asked if this would be an issue, he was told no problem at all. Similarly, when it was reported to choir leadership exactly who I was, they were nothing but gracious and happy to have me involved with church activity. And that strikes me as what Jesus would do, which is why I'm rather surprised that a picture taken by Karen was posted to Twitter through an account called Ex-Mos and Progmos posting their L's. This post was directed at Jim Bennett in the broader context of some of his political statements online. And as Jeremy Clarkson would say, we're not going to get bogged down with who said what to who. I'm not going to get into what Jim said, although of course I've linked this in the description, so feel free to go and read the full exchange yourself. But I do want to analyse a couple of things here. The person who posted from this account, possibly Karen or possibly someone she knows, tells Jim to do the following. Number 1, stop inviting known anti-Mormons to Tabernacle Choir practice. And then a couple of points later, number 4, strive to follow the teachings of Jesus, to love your enemies, do good to them who despise you. So which is it? From Karen's perspective, and I assume the perspective of the person that posted this, it would seem I am an enemy of the church, someone who despises the church. Now just to be clear, I'm not, and I don't, but that seems to be her view of me as a anti-Mormon. In that case, should Jim not show love towards me and do good towards me by offering me the chance to participate in the choir? I can't seem to quite make sense of what they want. But the big question really is, why am I telling you about all this, when I'd originally planned to keep it to myself? Do I want Karen kicked out of the choir? No, of course not. On some level, I understand why she did what she did. She felt compelled to defend the sanctity of the Tabernacle Choir from someone, in this case me, who she felt was desecrating that sacred space. Now I don't think I was, and the choir leadership seemed to agree with me. And that's the thing I wanted to highlight. The choir leaders. I want to highlight the choir leaders who saw the truth of the situation, who saw through the tribalism and saw instead someone who simply wanted to sing in harmony with others, to commune through music despite any differences, theological or otherwise. That's what deserves to be highlighted here, and if we can have more of that in the church, it will be a healthier and happier place.